Let me tell you about the day my world burned to the ground from the inside out. My name is Nina, and this is not a story about a prince. This is a story about a thief. A thief who didn't steal jewels or art. He stole the future right out of my hands. I lived in a gentle town, a town of soft green canopies and whispered hellos. My universe was the size of a flower shop, a sanctuary of scent and delicate living color. I breathed in roses and daisies each morning, and for a long time, I believed that was enough. I was a quiet soul, comfortable in my solitude, nurturing a small secret dream in the silence of my heart. A dream of a place where the smell of coffee and old books would mingle with the perfume of blossoms. It was a fragile hope, tucked away like a pressed flower in a diary, fed coin by coin, month by lonely month. And then he walked in. The bell above the door chimed, and there he was, a silhouette against the afternoon sun. He asked for flowers for his mother. His name was Alex. He had hair the color of dark earth and eyes. Oh, his eyes held the warmth of honeyed sunlight. His smile didn't just reach his eyes, it seemed to radiate from him, a tangible heat that melted the shy frost around my heart. He talked, and he listened. He truly listened. He saw me, not just the girl behind the counter, but the dreamer hiding in plain sight. He became a habit, then a heartbeat. Walks by the creek where the water sounded like laughter. Evenings in my small apartment that felt, for the first time, beautifully, perfectly full. He was witty and kind, and he looked at me as if I held the constellations in my hands. He spoke of love with a certainty that left no room for doubt. He kissed me, and in that touch I felt a promise of forever. My quiet dream became our roaring ambition. Nina's Garden Cafe, he would say, his voice painting the words in gold. He had ideas, plans, a head for numbers. He made the impossible feel inevitable. Then the miracle appeared. The perfect space, a little old shop needing love waiting for us. But it required a deposit, a sum that sat just beyond my careful savings. I have money, he said, his warm hands cradling mine. But it's tied up. If we use your savings now, combined with the little I can borrow, we can secure it. My money comes through in a few weeks, and then, my love, then we build our future. He showed me the lease, the pictures. Our dream had a street address. Trust is not a door you decide to open. It is a room you realize you are already standing inside, without remembering how you got there. I was already in that room. So I went to the bank. I placed every hope, every sacrifice, every silent prayer I'd ever whispered into that cold metal vault onto the counter. I watched as the teller counted out my future in crisp, indifferent bills. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with a terrifying, glorious hope. I placed the envelope in his hands. For our café, I whispered, my heart a wild, joyful bird in my chest. He pulled me into an embrace so tight it stole my breath. Thank you for trusting me, he murmured against my hair, his voice thick with emotion. This is the start of everything. His kiss felt like a seal, a sacrament. I watched him walk away, the envelope tucked safely in his coat, a spring in his step. He turned and waved, that brilliant, honey-eyed smile flashing one last time. And then he turned the corner. He didn't call that night. The dinner I made grew cold. The table I set for two sat in mocking silence. My calls went straight to a void. My texts vanished into a digital abyss. The cold feeling started in the pit of my stomach. A slow, creeping frost that climbed up my ribs, crystallized around my lungs. I sat by the window as night bled into dawn, each passing hour a hammer blow to my soul. Please, please, please. The next morning, under a cruelly bright sun, I ran. I ran to his apartment, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. My fists pounded on the door until they ached. Silence. An old neighbor on the porch looked up from his paper. "Gone," he said, his voice scratchy and final. "Yesterday. Had a suitcase." The words didn't sound like words. They were physical blows. Suitcase. Gone. I slid down the wall, the rough brick tearing at my skin, but I felt nothing. Nothing but the cataclysmic shattering of my entire reality. He was a phantom. A beautiful, cruel ghost who had haunted my life and vanished with its very substance. The money was nothing. It was paper. But he took the dream he helped me paint. He took the trust I didn't know I'd given. He took the version of myself that believed in love's promises. He left behind a hollowed-out shell, standing in the dust of a future that never was. I walked home, a ghost moving through a world that had lost all its color. The flowers in my apartment, the last ones he gave me, were now just dying things. Their sweet scent had turned cloying, funereal. I opened my bank book. The numbers were a bleak, minimalist poem of ruin. Years of patience, of denial, of hope, gone. And then the pain arrived. And it ripped through the numbness and tore a scream from a place so deep inside me I didn't know it existed. It was a sound of pure animal devastation. I collapsed on the floor, the weight of it crushing me. I didn't cry for the cafe. I wept for the man who never was. I wept for the kisses that were lies, for the whispered plans that were fiction, for the hands that held mine only to empty them. I wept until I was raw, until there was nothing left but a dry, heaving emptiness. This is what it feels like when your truth is murdered. The days that followed were a blur of gray agony. Waking up was a fresh betrayal. The world had continued to spin. How dare it? I moved through my job like an automaton. The smiles from customers were tiny, sharp knives. My boss, dear Mrs. Gable, watched me with eyes full of the pity that scalded. I pushed everyone away. Their kindness felt like a spotlight on my stupidity, my shame. How could I have been so blind? So pathetically, hopelessly naive? My apartment became a museum of his betrayal. Every object a relic of the crime. One night I gathered them all. The photos, the silly mug, the book of poetry he said reminded him of me. I shoved them into a cardboard coffin and sealed it shut in the dark closet. But the ghost wasn't in the objects. It was in the silence. In the way the light fell at a certain angle. In the scent of rain that we once walked in. He was everywhere. And he was nowhere. I contemplated going to the police. But what was my case? A woman gives her money to a man who said he loved her? A tale as old as time and just as futile. He was a professional. Of course he was. The name, the job, the story, all of it a carefully crafted set piece for my little tragedy. I was not his first victim. I was just the one currently drowning in the aftermath. Then, an old woman by the creek, Mrs. Petrova, her hands weaving yarn with ancient, steady rhythm. She didn't look at me when she spoke. Heartbreak is a heavy stone, child, but you don't have to carry it alone forever. Her words hung in the air. You are stronger than the stone. In that moment, I felt weaker than I had ever felt. But the words, they took root. That evening, I did not sit in the dark. I opened my mother's old cookbook, its pages stained with memory and love. I would bake. Not for the shop, not for anyone. For me. I measured flour, I cracked eggs, I sliced apples, the rhythmic sound a quiet mantra against the screaming in my head. And when the warm cinnamon-spiced scent of apple muffins began to weave through the apartment, it did something extraordinary. It didn't erase the pain, it simply existed beside it. A small, defiant island of goodness in a sea of hurt. I took a bite, and for the first time in weeks, I tasted something. It was sweet. It was warm. It was a memory of a time before him, a thread connecting me back to a self he could not touch. It was the tiniest spark in an endless night, but it was mine. I began to bake like a woman possessed. Bread that needed pounding. Pastries that required delicate, focused attention. The kitchen became my laboratory, my therapy room, my battlefield. I brought the results to Mrs. Gable, a silent offering. Her eyes, when she tasted a lemon pound cake, welled with tears. "Oh, my dear girl," she whispered, "you have magic in your hands." A customer asked to buy a cookie. Then another. A small sign appeared in the flower shop. Nina's homemade treats. The coins and bills that came back were not just currency. They were tokens. Evidence that I could still create something of value, something that brought a moment of joy. I opened a new bank account. The first deposit was painfully, beautifully small. It was a seed. One afternoon, I took the box from the closet. I lifted the lid, not with trembling fear, but with a steady, solemn curiosity. I looked at the photograph of us by the creek. My smile was so wide, so unguarded. I didn't hate her, that girl. I mourned for her. I felt a vast, protective tenderness for her boundless hope. She was not a fool. She was a believer. And he was a thief who specialized in stealing from believers. I put the photo away. The box went on a shelf. It was just a box now. The ghost was finally losing its power. The dream has changed shape. It is no longer a grand cafe built on the sandcastle of a shared fantasy. It is smaller. Soldier. It is the dream of a mixing bowl and a warm oven, of a Saturday market stall, of my own name on a simple, honest sign. It is a dream built by my own scarred hands, one batch at a time. He took my money. He took my naive trust. He took a year of my life and colored it with a lie. But he did not take my hands that know how to create sweetness from flour and salt. He did not take the kindness of Mrs. Gable or the wisdom of Mrs. Petrova by the creek. He did not take the scent of the earth after rain or the feeling of cool clay on a wheel. And with every breath I take without him, I reclaim a piece of my own soul. If you are listening to this, and you are holding a stone of your own, a stone of betrayal, of loss, of a stolen future, hear me. The pain is the proof that you loved, that you hoped, that you dared to dream. That is not a weakness. That is your humanity. And it is unbreakable. Let yourself shatter. Then begin. Begin with the smallest thing you can control. Make a cup of tea and really taste it. Walk to the end of the street and feel the ground under your feet. Bake a muffin. Let its warmth be a promise to yourself that good things can still be made, even by broken hands. The path forward is not about forgetting. It is about integration. Weaving the betrayal into the tapestry of your life so it becomes a dark thread that adds depth, contrast, and ultimately strength to the picture. You will trust again, but it will be a wiser trust, a trust that starts with yourself. You will dream again, but they will be your dreams, forged in the fire of your own resilience. Look at me, Nina, the girl who loved flowers, the woman who survived the frost. My life is not a tragedy. It is a testimony to the fact that a heart can be pillaged, but a spirit, a true spirit, is theft-proof. Hold on to your spirit. It is the one thing they can never, ever take. Begin there. Just begin.